Welcome back to the Woodwork Experience. It's been 40 minutes and it's time to take our block out of the vise. Now, this cork piece will be securely attached, but it won't reach maximum strength for about another 12 to 24 hours. So I want to give it as much time as possible to dry and cure and create that bond before I continue with working with the base piece. But there is a section on the top that we can continue working with. And this is, of course, adding the chamfer to the top of this. Now, a chamfer is a 45-degree angle that goes the whole way around the top edge. For that, there are a few ways that we could do it. We could use a router and run a router with a chamfer bit in it the whole way around. It is the quickest method, but we're going to be using the router in future videos, so I thought we'd do it by hand. Now, we could use a plane. Now, there's nothing wrong with planing, but in the previous video, I have covered some use of the plane, and so I thought this time we might look at a file. It's going to take a little bit more work, but it will allow us to creep up to that perfect chamfer and really get a great looking finish on that product. So for this, you are going to need to go through and get yourself a metal rule. Now, I would suggest anything smaller than 300 is appropriate. Anything over is overkill. If I had a 150 millimeter ruler, I would be using that one right now. You're also going to need yourself a marking gauge. Now, these are nifty little units, and the great thing about a marking gauge is that you can set a distance between the bed here and the point there, and that's going to allow you to move this up and keep a set distance, so you're not having to measure and mark, measure and mark, measure and mark, which is a really painful and annoying process. So to use your marking gauge, all you're going to come through and do is loosen off that handle, slide this up to where it's near 5 millimeters, grab out your metal rule, and measure that to 5 millimeters to the point. Then come through and tighten that up. Now, you always want to double check those measurements to make sure that's sitting exactly where you want it. Now, if you're really lucky, when you tighten the back, it won't move. But normally with a marking gauge, as soon as you go to tighten that back, it has a tendency to want to shift. Now, for me, this time it hasn't, which I'm very thankful for. But if it has, all you want to come through and do is you push it lower than it needs to be. So I'd push it lower than it needs to be. Then I get my fingers behind it like so, and I just slowly roll them forward, I'm going to say, until you can get that exact fit. So if I'm there, I'd move it to there, get that exact fit. Then I'm going to tighten this up, and then always double check, because they do have a habit of sliding and moving on you. Now, I'm pretty happy with that, and it's time to move on. Let's progress here. Now, with this, you're going to want to have a vise, because it makes life so much easier. Yes, you can do it in your hand, but it's a real pain. So I always find having a vise is the way to go. Holding it, thumb at the back on your marking gauge, finger at the front on your product, and then this top hand comes through and it applies the pressure downwards and pulls it. Now, once again, go most of the way through, then turn it around and come back, because otherwise you end up getting to the end of the bed and you can roll off and it becomes a whole lot harder. So that pincing technique once again, put it down and pull back. Now, if you do need to make sure that you are cutting in, otherwise you're going to be disappointed with the outcome. Once again, as you can see, it's doing a very good job of giving us a parallel line running with the edge. And this is why marking gauges are so invaluable. Now, what you need to go through and do is you need to go through and do that on all edges around the side. From there, we do need to marking gauge the top edge as well. So for this one, you could definitely try and clamp it down. It could be handy to get a friend. Otherwise, you can always just come through, hold it by hand, and drag this back. But you are likely to have more issues if you have not got the experience of using a marking gauge. Awesome. Continue this on all 4 tops for the side as well, and all 4 sides. Once you've got that done, I'll see you in the next episode of the Woodwork Experience.